Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Emily sat on her old bed and ran her hands over the tattered bedspread. It was a bedspread her grandmother had made for her mom a long time ago. Then it had been inherited by Emily. Probably many people would think that such an old and tattered thing should be thrown in the trash. But Emily didn't think so. This bedspread was very expensive. It seemed to her girls that it held the memory of her mother. This Emily needed. A memory of the person dearest to her. One must keep something for oneself. When loved ones die, it's something that will always remind you of them. And this blanket was one of those things. Emily's parents died years ago, 10 years to be exact. Little Emily was 8 at the time. The death of her parents was very hard on the girl. They had an accident. On their wedding anniversary, the parents decided to make a holiday for themselves and went to the river, leaving their daughter with her grandmother. Emily could have died too. After all, the parents wanted to take her with them, but the girl had a sore throat, and it was decided to leave the child at home. They went swimming in the river and then decided to go for a boat ride. What happened next? No one really knew, but the parents drowned. The boat was found later. It was washed up on the shore, and it was stuck in the reeds. And then the bodies were found. Emily had had a very hard time. Nancy was also very grieving for her daughter and son-in-law, but she had to think of her granddaughter. Emily had no one else but her, so Nancy took on the task of raising her. It was hard for the girl to cope alone, but the woman tried her best. Since the death of her parents, the girl's life and well-being depended only on her grandmother. Emily sighed and lovingly stroked the bedspread again. Every corner, every patchwork, everything had been put together by her grandmother's skillful hands. The girl caught herself thinking that now this piece reminded her not only of her mother, but of her grandmother as well. Emily very much wanted to take the bedspread with her to the city, to take this piece of her relatives, who would be missed so much. But unfortunately, she won't be physically able to take it away. She only has to take what she can take. The girl sighed again and frowned. Fear appeared in her eyes. Is she doing the right thing by leaving? Wouldn't she regret her decision? Wouldn't she feel bad there? But she wouldn't find the answers until she left. If she stays, she'll never rest. She'll regret for the rest of her life that she didn't try and leave. Emily had long dreamed of moving to the city. She thought that she would never find happiness in the countryside. Her soul longed to go somewhere she had never been before. She went to bed and imagined how good it would be to live in the city, how happy she would be there, how many new friends and opportunities she would have. She was sure her dream would never come true. Where would she go? Where would she get the money to organize the move? It was impossible. What made it possible was when her friend Camille moved into town. Camille was such a darling that she made all the teachers at school cry. Sometimes she even scared the local bullies. They preferred not to mess with her. Camille fought so hard she could leave serious bruises. And it just so happened that Camille chose Emily to be her friend. She was 2 years older, and they became friends by accident. A local was harassing Emily from behind, and Camille was walking by, and she stood up for Emily. From then on, they had a lot of run-ins. Camille graduated from high school and moved to the city. A long time ago, Camille's mama was married to a city man. They were divorced a long time ago. Dad wasn't involved in preschool life, but as it happened, he died and had no heirs. His one-room apartment went to Rick, and the girl happily moved in. She immediately found a job at a lingerie store. Emily and Camille never lost touch. They always called each other and corresponded. Sometimes Camille came to visit her in the village. On her next visit, she said to Emily in a serious tone, "As soon as you finish school, move to my place in the city and live with me. We'll find you a job. I can see in your eyes that you are suffering. When I come, you want to go to the city too. You don't even have to tell me anything, I can see that. But I can't. Emily, I definitely can't. I don't know how." But Camille just shook her head and said firmly, "I know what you're trying to say. You're afraid to leave your grandmother, but that's stupid of you. I know you're worried about her, but you have to think about yourself. It's your life, you know. Do you want to spend the rest of your life in the country? Your grandmother will die one day and you'll stay in the village and you'll wish you'd had the courage to leave. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I don't regret leaving. I'm a city girl now, you know. It's gonna be easier for you than it is for me. You have me, and I'm not gonna leave you. I'll teach you everything, and you'll be happy. Talking to Camille managed to stir up something in Emily's soul that she tried to suppress. She really didn't want to stay in the village, but how could she leave her grandmother? Would she be able to understand her, to forgive her for leaving her? Wouldn't her grandmother see her dreams of city life as foolishness, a lie? But the more Emily thought about the city, the more she wanted to leave. It became an obsession. She graduated from high school and decided to have a serious talk with her grandmother. Told her that she was going to leave. It was a difficult conversation. Grandma was very upset. She didn't scream, she didn't scandalize, but there was such pain in her eyes, as if she had lost the dearest person, and cried very bitterly that night. Emily went to bed with a heavy heart. All night she could not calm down. By morning, she decided that she was not going anywhere. She realized that she could not leave her grandmother in such a state. The old woman might die of grief and longing, left alone. The pain of losing her parents was too strong. The grandmother would not be able to withstand another loss, and even though her granddaughter was alive, she would be far away. She would have her own new life, and Grandma would have nothing to do with it. The next morning, Emily was about to tell her grandmother that she had changed her mind. But to her surprise, she was in a great mood and said to her granddaughter, "Dear, I've thought about everything and I've decided that you're right. You really should go away. You'll have lots of opportunities there. Get a job, save money, go to school. You can do something with your life, and Camille will be there for you. You won't be alone for me, don't worry. You'll come and visit me. I'll be waiting for you, I'll cook you good things. Besides, we have cell phones. You can call me at any time to send pictures, and I will know that you are doing well, and I will be at peace. Go for your dream, my favorite granddaughter." It's been a month, and Emily is ready to leave. Her bags are packed. Tomorrow morning, she has to take the bus that will take her to the city. In her heart, Emily felt a terrible thrill and delight that her dream was coming true, but still she was overcome by some anxiety. The girl realized that she was fundamentally changing her life, and no matter how much she dreamed of good things, she could not know what awaited her. Emily heard a rustle and woke up. Looking around, she saw her grandmother in the doorway. "Grandma, you scared me. Did you want something?" "No, I just wanted to sit with you for a few minutes." Emily smiled. "Come on, sure, sit next to me." Nancy looked lovingly at her granddaughter. She came in and sat next to her on the bed. She placed her right palm on her granddaughter's hand, and with her left, she stroked the bedspread she had once sewn for her daughter. Nancy was silence. Each was thinking about something different. Grandmother couldn't believe that her granddaughter would be leaving tomorrow. She had loved this little girl so much since she was born, and after her parents died, she loved her for 3. Of course, the news that Emily was leaving for the city had shocked Grandma. She hadn't expected it. It was different in her dreams. She thought Emily would go to work on a farm, meet a decent guy, fall in love with him, get married, have a bunch of kids. Nancy would take care of the great-grandkids. She still got her strength, but it all happened, or fate itself would have intervened. Nancy was sure Emily would have stayed in the village if it hadn't been for Camille. That wench was driving the whole neighborhood crazy. From the beginning, Nancy had feared that Emily and Rick's friendship would not go well. Everything was fine for a while until Camille graduated and moved away. At that point, Nancy felt that things were not going to end well. Camille is adventurous and loves adventure. So many times already during the time she and Emily were inseparable. It was the girl who had gotten her granddaughter into all sorts of mischief. Thank goodness everything ended well. Serious trouble kept the girls out of trouble. But if Emily were to be turned into the city, what could it lead to? Nancy was afraid to even imagine. The old woman was sure that Camille had persuaded Emily to go to town and promised her golden mountains. But what could be good there? The same life as in the village, only more dangers and temptations. Everyone is in a hurry, cutting each other short, hurting each other, betraying each other. Nancy was afraid to imagine how many dangers lurked in her granddaughter's path. She had lived in the country all her life and had only been to the city twice, and she didn't like it at all. But Nancy knew not to dissuade Emily from her scheme. She knew that if she could just tell her granddaughter that she couldn't do it without her, Emily would stay with her in the village. But would she be happy? Wouldn't she blame her grandmother for ruining her life? Nancy did not know that, nor did she want to know. The girl must be given her freedom. If she had made up her mind, let her go her own way. Nancy had no right to interfere, not because she's not her mom, but because the girl deserves a chance at a better life. And if she wants something, she has to try. Nancy wasn't going to be the burden that dragged her down. Let her try her luck in the city. Maybe she'd actually make it, and Grandma would pray that her granddaughter would do well. "What are you thinking?" Emily asked. Nancy perked up, smiled, and looked at her granddaughter. "I'm thinking that you're going to be fine. Just please be careful. The city is a very dangerous place. You have no idea how dangerous. I know Camille loves you, but she's always been nocturnal. Of course, she won't leave you in trouble, but sometimes she loses her head and doesn't think of the consequences. I want you to have your own head on your shoulders. Think and act. Do the right thing, be decent in conscience. Let all the temptations of the city never get the better of you. Think of the future, what's best for you. I believe you'll do well." "Grandma." "Well, of course, I'll do the right thing. How could it be otherwise if you raised me? And don't think you'll make a bad sale. She's good. She won't get me into trouble. She knows you're worried. She knows you're worried. She knows I'm worried about you being here alone. She loves you too, and she doesn't want to worry you. She'll look after me, and I'll look after myself. Don't worry, I love you very much, Grandma, and I love you, Emily. Very much. Just one thing, don't forget me. Come visit me at least once a month, as often as you can. Whenever you feel like it. I'll always be waiting. Just not too often. You need the money, and you'll get tired. Don't forget me, call me." Tears came to Emily's eyes. She hugged her grandmother tightly and pressed herself against her. Nancy hugged her granddaughter back and closed her eyes. The next day, Emily took the bus to the city. It was a long ride. It was very hot in it. Emily was shaking a lot. The bus stopped often. By the end of the trip, she was in so much pain. She felt sick to her stomach. Camille met her at the train station, and they went straight to her place. Camille had a studio apartment, but it was quite spacious and cozy. Emily noticed that Camille behaved very differently in the city than she did in the country. She was very embarrassed that it was obvious that she was a country girl and the handouts were gone. But Camille reassured her, "Don't worry. Friend, you'll get the hang of it in no time. And by the way, I have good news. I got you a job," Camille proclaimed. "A job. You got me a job." But as Camille said with surprise, he smirked. "Are you doubting me? Yes, I got you a job, and that's a big deal. You'll be working with me in the same store. You know, there's an opening for a sales girl. Yeah, I know you don't know anything about lingerie, but that's okay. Don't worry, I'll get you up to speed in no time. I'm sure you'll make a great consultant. I talked to Jenna. She wasn't too happy with your candidacy, but I promised I'd teach you quickly, and that you're smart, pretty, hardworking, and obedient. Diligent, generally reliable." And she said yes. "You're going in for your interview tomorrow." "Interview? What's that? You're scaring me. I don't know what to do there," mumbled Emily. So Emily quickly pulled herself together. A job interview is just a conversation with the boss. You show up, you smile. You introduce yourself. Tell her you dream of working at this store. Tell her that you are ready to learn everything, admit mistakes, listen to criticism, if there is such a thing. The most important condition is to agree to the salary that you will be assigned. It will be many times less than mine. But it's understandable. You'll be a trainee. You'll be on probation. Be thankful you're getting a paycheck, right? Of course, I wrote to Jenna in the shower that you're an orphan, that you have no one. You're having a hard time? She shrunk and agreed to take you in. Basically, go along with everything she says. Go along with it, and she'll hire you. That'll be great. We'll go to work together, come home together. Wouldn't that be great? Emily thought about it for a moment. I guess it would be cool, but it would be too abrupt. It all seemed so fast. In the morning, she was still living her usual life in the village, and now she came to the city, and tomorrow she had to go to the interview. She didn't even have time to catch her breath, to plan, to get used to city life, to settle in. Camille put her straight to the point. Yes, I'm not comfortable. Everything's moving too fast. I'm nervous. Don't worry, I'm right here with you. I'll be fine. Well, what did you want this town to be like? You gotta keep moving around. Otherwise, you'll end up down here, and Emily trusted. The next day, even nauseous with excitement, she went to the interview. Camille's boss talked to her, and Emily tried her best to please Jenna, did everything her friend told her to do. And though this slightly arrogant woman had some reservations about Emily, still she took her on probation, and Emily started working with Camille at the lingerie store. Luckily, Emily was worried for nothing. She really got to know the store quickly. Camille was always telling her how to work, how to behave with customers, what to say to the boss, when to smile, when to approach, and when it is better not to touch the customers, to give them time to choose. And Emily was learning everything. She enjoyed it immensely. And after a few weeks, she even laughed at herself, remembering how afraid to come to the store. The girl had a new life. She plunged headlong into work. And on weekends, Camille took her around the city, showing her the sights. The best cafes, restaurants, stores. Emily watched city life with her mouth open, watching how people behaved, listened to the way they talked, realized with horror how different she was from all those people. She remembered her promise to her grandmother to behave with modesty, decency, quiet poise. This was difficult to do in town, because if Emily behaved like this, she was different from all the residents in a very different way. Camille introduced Emily to several of her city friends. Those looked at her obliquely, chuckling behind her back. Camille really wanted Emily to make friends with them, but the girl could not find common ground with Camille's friends. And then there was one meeting that changed Emily's life. She met Alex. Mostly customers in lingerie stores were women, but sometimes men, boyfriends, husbands, lovers, who wanted to make their girlfriends, wives, mistresses pleasant, visited them. At first, Emily was embarrassed to serve male customers, but then she got used to it. Besides, she comforted herself with the fact that sometimes men were even more embarrassed than she was. Once in the store came a guy who wanted to buy a set of underwear and a pair of stockings. It so happened that Emily was serving him. She immediately noticed that the guy was looking at her with interest, and unlike many other men, he was not at all embarrassed that he had to buy intimate items. Calmly described the models he wanted to look at, considered stockings, erotic sets, and all the time everything on Emily. When he had selected what he wanted, looked at Emily carefully and asked, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" Emily was stunned. She didn't expect such a question and didn't know what to say. She blushed and was embarrassed. The guy, watching her reaction, smiled. "Did I embarrass you in some way, or you just don't want to answer me? Maybe you have a boyfriend." No, you didn't embarrass me." "No, I don't have a boyfriend. I'm sorry, maybe I'm being rude." Emily struggled to speak, stuttering at every word. The guy continued to watch her, holding the things he was about to buy. He noticed how Emily looked at the lingerie he was twirling in his hands and immediately said with an innocent smile, "You know, I'm busy today. I'm going to my sister's birthday party. I'm picking out a present for her, but tomorrow I'm completely free. If you're not busy, I'd like to take you to a restaurant. What time do you get off work?" Emily was sure the guy was buying lingerie for his girlfriend or wife. There was no ring on his finger. After he said he was buying a gift for his sister, she breathed a sigh of relief and smiled shyly at him. But for some reason, she felt uneasy. Looking him straight in the eye, she wanted to refuse. But suddenly she felt the urge to meet him. "I finish at 19 o'clock, but I don't know if it's convenient." Emily did not have time to finish. The guy quickly interrupted her. "That's fine. At 19 o'clock, I'll be waiting for you near the store. My name is Alex." He said it so confidently that she did not even dare to refuse him and shyly answered Emily. All night she hardly slept. Camille came home late. She was out with her friends. So Emily did not have time to tell her that she had been asked out on a date. She told her in the morning. Camille clapped her hands happily and said she was happy for Emily. She had prepared her dress for her, in which she offered Emily to go to the restaurant with her new acquaintance. Carefully folding the dress, she handed it to Emily to take with her to the store. She would change after work and be out in this dress by the new deadline. Emily barely made it through the day. She was so excited thinking about the evening. At 5 o'clock, she was already starting to think that she had imagined all of this, that the guy was only mocking her. It was obvious from him that he had the attention of girls. He was not lacking in confidence. Why did he want Emily? A country girl who was embarrassed by his every word. She began to feel like he wasn't coming. Camille made Emily put on a dress. Even if he doesn't come, you just go home. Pretty, she said. Surprisingly, Alex came exactly at 7 and waited for her outside the store. When Emily came out, Alex looked her over carefully from head to toe and smiled. She responded with a shy smile. He was satisfied with her appearance. From the look in his eyes, Emily realized that he liked her. From that very meeting, Alex and Emily did not part. They started dating. Almost every day, Alex made a date with her. He was really loaded, as Camille said, and Emily spent some of her savings on new outfits to match him. She couldn't go to restaurants in worn-out, old jeans and a crumpled t-shirt. With Camille's help, she had revamped her closet and looked like a fashionable city girl. The feeling she had for Alex made her blossom. Her eyes glistened, her whole self shone. And quite often she smiled unconsciously when thinking about her lover. 3 weeks after meeting Alex, Emily gave herself to him, forgetting prudence and modesty. He became her first man, and 2 months later Alex proposed to her, and Emily accepted. She called her grandmother and told her that she was getting married. Unfortunately, Alex refused to organize a wedding. He just wanted to sign the papers and go on a wedding trip together. Alex's parents, Wendy and Sam, were not thrilled that their son would marry some simple country girl, but they accepted his choice. Apparently, Alex had a serious talk with them and said he would get married anyway. They probably decided not to spoil their relationship with their son. However, Emily felt that they were indifferent to her. She dreamed of finding a new family. But with sadness, she realized that she would be in a good relationship only with her husband. A month later, they got married and went on a wedding trip. Although Emily was very sad that her grandmother could not attend the wedding, she was still happy. Now she was sure that she had not come to the city for nothing. She had found her destiny, the loved one she was going to spend the rest of her life with. Emily looked sadly at herself in the mirror. Her mood was just disgusting. For weeks now, she and her husband had had such a strained relationship that they barely spoke. No matter what she did, she couldn't fix the situation. Emily applied a cream to her face and ran her fingers over her skin, then enriched herself on the dressing table and sighed, looking at herself in the mirror. It had been 3 years since their wedding day. For almost 2.5 years, everything had been wonderful. She considered herself the luckiest person on earth. She quit her job right away and didn't get a job anywhere else because Alex was against her working. He believed he could provide for the two of them. Indeed, Emily had almost everything now. She could buy herself any things, go to salons, cafes, restaurants. She no longer depended on anything. Alex bought her jewelry, took her on vacation. Once they went abroad. Emily was delighted. Living in the countryside, she would never have thought that she would travel so far. Everything was new. Alex laughed at her as she watched everything around her with her mouth open. Alex was always taking her to parties, meeting friends, wanting to introduce her to everyone he was close to. He was especially friends with Vanessa, Molly, Stephen, and Christopher. They had known each other since high school. His best friends were the children of well-to-do parents. It brought them closer together. Ever since high school, they spent all their time together. As they grew up, they stayed close. And Alex wanted his friends to like Emily, to be part of their friendly company. But that didn't happen. Emily behaved modestly, could not find a common language with them. At any party, she tried to hide so that no one could see her. When Alex tried to introduce her to someone, she was lost, had in response something incomprehensible. At first, her husband just laughed. He tried to explain everything to her, taught her how to behave, told her it was important to find a common language with his environment. "You're lucky. but you realize that these people are part of my life. We spend a lot of time together. I got married, but that shouldn't interfere with my friendship. I want you to be friends with the policy girls. They're great. They're fun. They can tell you where to hang out in the city. Go shopping with them at the telecom salons. Go to the fitness club regularly. Could you go with her? You have tons of free time. Live and enjoy yourself, he told her. Emily proves to him that she is not at all comfortable with his friends. She feels awkward. She feels like they are laughing at her behind her back. No one's laughing at you, but you make things up. You amaze me sometimes. Why don't you wise up and forget about your village? All you talk about is your friend Camille's grandmother and village life. You're a city dweller now. My wife, and you're welcome to it. Alex was angry. To his wife, these words offended Emily. She never expressed to her husband. Discontent silently bore a grudge, continuing to say that she did not feel at ease when socializing with his friends. After a while, Alex stopped taking her to meet his friends. At first, Emily breathed a sigh of relief. She felt good at home. Those noisy oddball parties drove her crazy on those evenings when Alex went out to have fun. Alex called Camille over to her place. At first, Camille came happily. They had a great time, ordered something delicious, drank champagne. Emily was happy with this arrangement. Her husband vacationed with people he felt comfortable with, and Emily does the same thing. She's comfortable with Camille. Maybe she'll make friends, but right now she was fine with that. Alex showed up early one day and caught Camille at their house. He didn't like Camille. He thought she was an upstart and was against Emily socializing with her. You could have made a lot of good friends. This is Camille. She's not for you at all. That you, clinging to your country friends when you're used to city life. I don't think I'll ever drink that village out of you, he said to Emily. She was hurt, but she voted her orbit. She loved her husband and did not want to quarrel with him. And about herself, she thought. After all, Alex had married her knowing she was from the village. Why does he make her forget her past, her native home? She thought it was unfair. But knowing how emotional her husband is, I was sure it would only lead to a fight, and she didn't want to fight. 2.5 years after her wedding, her grandmother died. Emily was in shock. She rarely visited her grandmother, mostly when Alex was away on business. After the wedding, she wanted to introduce her husband to the only relative she had left, but Alex categorically refused to go to the village, so Emily traveled alone when he was not at home. She was ashamed of herself in front of her grandmother. Nancy didn't understand why Emily wouldn't introduce her to her husband, and she said her husband was busy. He had a lot of work, and he was often traveling and didn't have time to go with her. Nancy pretended to understand everything, but in fact, she was terribly offended that her granddaughter's husband couldn't spare time to get acquainted with her. And Emily was afraid to admit that he just didn't want to do it. When Emily learned of her grandmother's death, she was hysterical. She confronted her husband with the fact that he had to go with her to the village for the funeral. But Alex refused. On the day of the funeral, he was invited to a birthday party to the boss, and he was not going to miss this evening. He also promised to take his wife with him, but Emily absolutely refused. She was going to her grandmother's funeral. Alex and Emily had a big fight. For the first time in 2.5 years, Emily went against her husband. She left to see her grandmother off on her final journey. From that time on, things began to deteriorate between them. Alex started treating her differently. Emily thought that he just resented her for obeying him, but then she realized that this was not the case. She tried to connect with her husband, even apologized for obeying. But he paid no attention to those apologies. He indifferently shrugged his shoulders and replied coldly, "You did what you wanted to do. That's your own business. And I drew my conclusions, that's all." He didn't say anything else. Did he accept the apology, or was he still offended? He didn't say anything. Emily kept trying to make things work, but nothing was working. She started asking him to go out with her friends, but to her dismay, Alex refused to take her with him and kept making up excuses for her not to go with him. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, Emily sighed again and closed her eyes, rubbing her temples with her hands. She frowned. He was going out today too. He called half an hour ago and said he'd get home from work, shower, change, and leave. Today was Molly's birthday. She was throwing a huge party all night. Emily opened her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror again. Determination appeared in her eyes. She would go out with him tonight. Walking over to her closet, the girl started rummaging among the dresses, picking out the right ones for tonight. After a few minutes, she pulled out a dress that she particularly liked and her husband liked. She was going to wear it tonight. She would smile at everyone, talk to everyone, drink champagne, have fun. She would prove to her husband that she knew how to socialize with his friends. Half an hour later, Alex arrived. Emily greeted him with a smile. She tried to hug her husband, but he pulled away. "I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry, so I'm late. Alex, I want to go with you. I promise I'll be on my best behavior. I'm in a great mood. I want to have fun, drink champagne, dance, laugh with everyone, and socialize." Alex smirked and looked at her with disdain. "I doubt you'll do that. We've lived together for 3 years. I know you well," he replied, coldly taking off his jacket. Emily tensed, but squeezed out a smile in response. "No, I'll act differently tonight, and I promise. Take me with you. You'll see. I'm ready to act the way you want me to act. That's what I want. I'm sick of sitting at home. I want to have fun. I'll wear your favorite dress that you like so much." Alex, continuing to undress, shook his head. "No, I'm going alone. Besides, there's no room for you there. You should have told me beforehand that you were coming with me. If you had told me in advance that it was Molly's birthday, I would have said I was coming with you. But you just told me half an hour ago. Isn't there a place for me?" Emily asked in surprise. Alex shrugged irritably and said sharply, "No, there isn't. Once again, I'm going alone. And please don't make a scene. I'm in a bad mood today. I need to relax and have fun. Your presence is bound to ruin it. And I don't want to ruin your evening. So stay home. You can call your nasty Camille and don't wait for me until morning. I'm in a hurry. This conversation is over." He threw his things on the table, went into the bathroom, and slammed the door shut with force. The sharp sound made Emily flinch. Her lips quivered and tears came to her eyes. Never had her husband been so abrupt and rude to her. She didn't understand what was happening to him. She became frightened. She didn't know what to do, how to get along with her husband when he hardly communicated with her. She imagined that today would be nice and fun, and he, looking at her, would realize that his wife really wanted to be the one for him. She was going to seduce him tonight, and tomorrow she wanted to talk to him about the baby. She really wanted a baby and hoped that Alex would support the idea. They had been married for 3 years now. A baby would diversify their lives. Now she stood in the middle of the bedroom and bit her lower lip, almost crying with resentment. She didn't want to call Camille in this state. She would pay in front of her. Camille would start comforting her, scolding Alex. Emily will have to complain about her husband. Camille will give advice. She'd better be alone, get on the internet, read psychologists. How to fix things with her husband. Camille believed they could overcome this crisis. It is only necessary to be a little patient. Alex packed up and silently left for the party. Emily stayed home until 12 o'clock. She read all sorts of life stories on the internet. Then she took a sedative and went to bed. She thought she wouldn't fall asleep, but she fell asleep quickly. When she woke up at 10 o'clock, she found that her husband was not back yet. She called him, but he didn't answer. She called again and again, but there was no answer. Emily became worried. Her husband came home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Emily didn't like the look on his face, as if something terrible had happened. He looked at her with anger, and then she saw that he was still drunk. "What's wrong with you? Your face is gone. Are you sick?" Emily asked cautiously. But her husband answered her so rudely that she was at a loss for words. "What, are you going to leave me? How can I be sick of you? Can't you see I'm in no mood to talk? Give me a rest. If you want to talk, we'll talk tonight. I have something to say too." After that, he went to bed. Apparently, he'd had a rough night. Emily was shocked by this conversation, but decided not to touch him until he was asleep. Then she would tell him what she thought. She had to protect herself. She was tired of being a submissive sheep. Emily spent the rest of the evening thinking about what she would say to her husband. In her opinion, she had prepared a great speech and thought it would be the beginning of their reconciliation. She would talk to him openly about everything, tell him everything she was not satisfied with, listen to his claims. And she was sure that they would come to a compromise and the conflict would be settled. It's just the first crisis in their family life. Everyone goes through it. She read online. She had no one to ask for advice. So she trusted the opinion of psychologists. But that evening, she got an unpleasant surprise. When Alex got up, he sobered up and got some sleep. And Emily was ready to start a serious conversation. But her husband began to speak first. Yesterday was a wonderful evening, or rather night. I had time to have fun and think about our life, particularly our relationship. I've made a big decision, even I'm sure you'll like it. You and I have been living together for 3 years. I thought you were a changed man. I knew I was marrying a country girl. A lot of people talked me out of marrying you, but I'm glad I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known how stupid I'd been. And now I realize my mistake. I'll be honest, I'm terribly tired of you. I'm tired of being in a relationship with you. Your whining, your moody moods, the look on your face like you don't like something. Can't you have any fun at all? I've come to the conclusion that we should break up. It's better for you and for me. You don't fit my lifestyle, and we don't fit together. I'm sorry, but you'll have to go back to your village. I don't want to discuss it. My decision is not up for discussion. You can scandalize, cry, scream, it's useless. I'll leave the house today, and tomorrow I'll take you home your bathrobe. But you have a choice. You can calmly pack everything you need and want. Tomorrow morning, I will take you to your grandmother. Emily stared at her husband in silence for a few minutes, mouth open in amazement, finally mumbling, "Yes, my grandmother is dead." Alex smirked and replied, "I don't care who died. I don't care. You wanted me to go with you to the village, so I'm going to take you back to where I took you from. Anyway, my dear, dear wife, it's up to you how you go tomorrow, and you'll go anyway, with your things or in whatever you're wearing. I don't want to talk anymore. If you mess with me, you'll get in trouble. It's your choice." Emily sobbed into her pillow all night, swallowing her tears. She tried to understand what had happened, why he wanted to get rid of her. He had fallen out of love with her. She didn't know the answer to the question. She could only assume that he had gotten someone else. Emily just wasn't versed in that, though. Didn't know how men cheat on their wives or how to recognize infidelity. A few times she'd broken through to open her laptop and look up the answers online, but she'd immediately abandoned the idea. The answers on the internet didn't help her keep her family together. They were worthless. Grandma was right. There was no reason for her to move to the city. It didn't work out. By morning, Emily decided it was time to pack her bags. At first, she didn't want to take anything with her, but then she changed her mind. If her husband decided to get rid of her, she would take it with dignity. She won't sob, cry, beg him, resign herself to his decision. If he thinks that nothing good will come between them, let him take her to the country. There's nothing for her to do in the city anyway. You can't let her go back. She's got her own life. Emily didn't want to disturb her, and she didn't want to stay in the same town with her husband, her almost ex-husband. She'll go to the country and nurse her wounds. Every day she would mentally apologize to her grandmother, who had given her complete freedom of action. Only her actions did not lead to anything good. Her marriage only resulted in her rarely seeing her grandmother. And that was it. She packed her things. And in the morning, Alex silently loaded the suitcases into the car. He didn't say a word to her. It was a long, long drive. Emily and Alex were silent the whole way. Alex had headphones in his ears. He was listening to music. He had a happy smile on his face. It was obvious that he was very happy to get rid of his wife. Listening to him quietly humming a tune, Emily was ready to fall to the ground with shame for herself, because she could not do anything, could not defend herself, could not prove that she should be respected and reckoned with her opinion. And it was her own opinion. When they arrived in the village, Emily was sweating with excitement. She was shaking with terror that no one was waiting for her at home. Her grandmother had died. The house had been empty for over 6 months. She would be scared and lonely there. No one will be there to support and comfort her. No one will be able to explain what she is doing wrong in her life and why her husband was treating her like this. While still sitting in the car, Emily saw their neighbor. Aunt Evelyn she saw, pulling up, looking for the car, came to the fence and stared at them. "Why are you sitting there? Come out, come on. Maybe you're hoping I'll cross over. You're sorely mistaken. Come on, hurry up, I still have to drive back," said Alex rudely, shuddering at the sound of his voice. Emily sighed and opened the car door. When she got out, she looked at Aunt Evelyn. The neighbor recognized her and smiled. She opened the gate and walked towards them, but immediately stopped when she saw the suitcases that Alex had carried out and left next to Emily. A look of bewilderment appeared on Aunt Evelyn's face. Then she squinted her eyes and went to meet Emily again. As she came closer, she said, "Hello. My name is Evelyn. I'm Emily's neighbor, and you must be her husband. Nice to meet you. You finally come to visit. I'm sorry Nancy couldn't wait for you. She was so excited to meet you. Why don't we do it tonight?" Aunt Evelyn couldn't finish. Alex interrupted her abruptly. Let's just leave it at that. I brought Emily home and I'm not going to stay here. But Emily is here for good. You can invite her over tonight. You'll feel sorry for her. It's not very nice here," he said, looking contemptuously at his wife. Aunt Evelyn opened her mouth in surprise. She shifted her gaze tearfully to Alex, not realizing what was going on. Emily blushed with embarrassment. "Emily, what do you mean for good? Did you come to visit?" Aunt Evelyn asked. Emily opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. It was like she was numb. How stupid are people? "No. I said I brought her here for good. Are you deaf? I brought her home, where I took her from, where I'm taking her back to. You won't see me here again. I will not survive a second trip to this backwoods," Alex replied grimly. Aunt Evelyn looked at Emily's husband carefully. After a moment, she realized what he was saying. She realized that the two were no longer together. So Emily had come home. Then Aunt Evelyn shifted her gaze to the girl and said quietly, "Back home. That's how it is. If you need help, you just say only in your house. I couldn't do anything. I live alone. There's no one to help me. There are homeless people in your house. I saw someone yesterday. There was some commotion in the yard. I looked closely, and it seemed to me that someone was walking in the house." Emily felt her heart pounding hard, but she didn't have time to answer. Alex jumped back into the conversation. "Well, that's just great. It's great. You won't be bored, dear. Just the right company. You didn't think my company was good for you. No, it's not. It's better. Hello, darling. I'll send you the divorce papers." Leaving Emily standing there with the suitcases, Alex went to the car. A minute later, he was gone. Aunt Evelyn looked at Emily with pity. Nancy had been so worried about her granddaughter until she died. She felt something was wrong with her. The granddaughter came rarely. During her visits, she behaved strangely. Nancy complained that her granddaughter was hiding something. From what Aunt Evelyn saw now, she realized that what Emily was hiding was not the good relationship she had with her husband. That rascal and rare rude man had brought the girl home, left her in the middle of the street with her suitcases, and said so many hurtful words. No face on Emily. Poor girl. So upset and unhappy. He just got rid of her like she was a used item. "I guess I'll go, I don't even know," muttered Emily. Aunt Evelyn came closer and hugged her. "Don't be upset, my girl. It's even better to get rid of that asshole. Do you think you would have had a good life with him? Don't be upset, my little hen. You'll be fine. You've got Aunt Evelyn, and she's not gonna leave you. Besides, I promised her I'd take care of you. I think Nancy knew you'd come back. Before she died, she often told me how worried she was about you and asked me to take care of you if anything happened. I told her you were happy, that everything was fine, but she didn't believe me. She was worried, anxious. But what about it? Come on in and I'll help you carry your suitcase." Emily broke free of the embrace and said firmly, "No, I'm going home." Though Evelyn cast a quick glance at Emily and Nancy's house and muttered, "Oh, my chicken. But I told you I saw someone there yesterday. I'm afraid someone has taken up residence there. I'm scared to go there myself. Let's call one of the neighbors. Let's see who's there." Emily shook her head at Aunt Evelyn. It's okay. I'll go myself. It's time I proved to myself that I can take care of myself. I've been an innocent sheep for too long. If there's someone out there and you've been blown to smithereens, it's okay. Go home. I'll come back to you later. Emily, you better. Aunt Evelyn, it's okay, go, Emily said firmly. The neighbor shrugged and walked towards her house. Emily stood outside for a few more minutes looking at the suitcases. Then she squared her shoulders, picked up the 2 suitcases, and began to pull them along the ground. Opening the wicket gate, she dragged them into the yard, then came back and took the other 2 suitcases. Standing in the middle of the yard, she stared at the house. Did someone really live there? Emily did not expect herself to be so bold. Previously, she would never have entered the house knowing that someone else was there. And now, after the separation from her husband, she was so angry that she even wanted to find someone to take it out on. She stood in the middle of the yard for about 10 minutes, working up the courage to go into the house, all the while watching the windows. See if she saw someone or heard someone, or maybe someone would come out into the yard. But she didn't see or hear anything, and no one came out. Taking a deep breath and leaving the suitcases on the ground, Emily walked slowly towards the house. As she approached the door, she froze, listening for extraneous sounds, but heard nothing. Then took hold of the doorknob and pulled it down. The door opened. Taking another breath, Emily stepped inside. Stopping in the middle of the hallway, she looked around. She didn't see anything suspicious. Everything was the same as the last time she was here. Emily smiled slightly and then lowered her gaze, and the smile fell off her face. There was a dark, bloody stain on the floor directly in front of her. It was small in size from behind the soy, but it was definitely blood. So there was someone here after all. The first moment the girl was frightened and wanted to leave the house, to go to Aunt Evelyn, to call the neighbors for help. But then a great anger came over her. How dare they? This is Grandma's house. No one's allowed in here, and Emily wouldn't let anyone in here, and stain Grandma's floors with their bloody tears. Yeah, Emily's gonna kick him out right now. She won't let anyone defile Grandma's house. I'll get you with all the anger I can muster, Emily muttered. She entered the hall, but there was no one there. She saw the bloody print, and there's what? She's on the right track. Walked to her grandmother's bedroom. Didn't see any bloody footprints, but her bedroom door was open. Emily assumed no one was in here either. Most likely a homeless person had snuck into the house at night, slept overnight, and left in the morning. She went into her bedroom and was stunned. There was a guy lying on her bed, lying there with his eyes closed and not moving, either asleep, unconscious, or dead. His left pant leg was held up to his knee, and his foot was some kind of dirty rag. It just had blood on it. He was barefoot, and his left foot was covered in blood. Emily was scared. Scared not of this stranger, but of the fact that he was dead. Hey, she said quietly, not taking her eyes off him. The answer was silence. The guy didn't move. Emily looked closely and then said again, louder, Hey you. You're alive. Nothing happened. All caps on. She stepped closer and looked closely into the face of the guy lying on her bed. Oh my God, dead. What am I going to do now? Whispered the girl, and then the guy abruptly opened his eyes and stared at Emily. From fright, the girl screamed and bounced 2 steps back. At the same time, ran into the closet and hit her back painfully. Who are you? Barely whispered the guy. Emily recovered from the shock and attacked the stranger. You're the one who scared me. What a nightmare. I thought you were dead. My God, how many things went through my head. Who are you? What are you doing here? The guy didn't move. He kept staring at Emily in silence. Can you hear me? I'm talking to you. This is my grandmother's house. How did you get here? The guy blinked and, barely audible, whispered, I feel sick. Help me. He slowly closed his eyes again. Emily realized that he was really sick. She rushed into her grandmother's bedroom. There was medicine in the closet. She opened the closet, pulled out a box, and came running back in with it. Grandma had an even on the pin. Emily looked up at the nasty liquid attack and brought it up to the guy's nose. The guy groaned and moved his hand, grabbed Emily's palm, and squeezed it tightly. The girl oohed and awed. "Hey, take it easy. You're hurting me." She brought a glass of water. The guy drank the water and his skin got a little steamy. He came to his senses. "Are you going to tell me who you are? And why you're here? Who let you in?" "I'll tell you everything. I just need to make a phone call." "You have a phone?" Emily was surprised. "Of course I do." The guy's eyes brightened up. The girl took the phone out of her bag and handed it to him. He immediately made a call. She went into the kitchen. She heard the guy talking to someone in a low voice and then went silent. When she got back to the bedroom, the guy looked at her and smiled slightly. "Thank you so much. You saved me." Emily picked up her phone and started looking at the guy. He was pretty cute. The neighbors said there were homeless people living here. I thought she was exaggerating. I assumed some stray dog had crawled in. But when I saw the blood in the hallway, I was scared. "Who are you?" "You're homeless. How'd you get in here?" The guy smiled slightly, moved his foot, and winced at the pain. "My name is John. I'm from the city. I'm not homeless. I'm just in trouble. There's some people who wanted to get rid of me. Thank God they didn't succeed." "You're from the city. What kind of trouble?" "It's a long story. I'll tell it all now. If you let me stay for a while, not forever. I called some friends. They're coming to get me as soon as things are settled. Let me stay, please. I've been wandering in the woods for a long time, all tormented. I'm afraid they're still looking for me. If they find me, I'm finished. I need to hide and wait for my friends. Please help me. I thank you." Emily listened carefully to John. She believed him for some reason. It seemed to her that he wasn't lying. Although she had never trusted strangers before. It could be that the guy was a criminal, and she would be tried for hiding him. And if he committed a crime, got hurt in a shootout, and the police are after him, she'll go to jail for aiding and abetting a criminal. But immediately Emily banished those stupid thoughts from her mind. It's all fantasy. She just needed to hear what happened to him. "Okay, you can stay, but only on one condition. Tell me what happened right now. If you don't, I'll call the neighbors, and we'll call the police and let them deal with you." John squinted his eyes and looked Emily over from head to toe. "You may not believe me, but I'm a rich man. I have several of my own companies. Recently, large sums of money have been going missing, and I couldn't figure out where the money was going. I'm not going to be poor, of course, but the amount is quite tangible. Maybe money had disappeared before, but not in such amounts. I wanted to find out. I like things to be honest. I'm not going to let anyone cheat me. After a while, I figured it out, found out who was responsible. A small group of my employees were laundering money. It was all done behind my back. I gathered these people in my office and told them everything. They had worked with me for a long time, and I couldn't say anything bad about them. I gave them a choice. They had to quit and go to all four corners, and I would forget they ever existed. They agreed, but they did things differently. They stood me up outside my house at night, put me in a car, and took me somewhere. They tied my hands, hit me on the head, and put a gag in my throat. They took me for a long time. I was in and out of consciousness. Then I finally woke up, but I pretended I was still unconscious. I managed to escape. Only my hands were tied, and it was very uncomfortable to walk. Naturally, they chased me, but I managed to hide. It wasn't far from this village. Then I went out into the forest, wandered around for 2 days, and somehow managed to free myself from the ropes. I hit a sharp rock, and I lost the ropes for hours. I drank some water from a stream and ate nothing for days. I was afraid they would find me and kill me. From their conversations in the car, I knew that's what they were going to do. During the night, I fell and hurt my leg on something. I was bleeding, so I put a t-shirt on it and hope it's nothing serious. I got to this house. I felt so bad last night. I knocked on the door and hoped someone would open and help me. No one opened the door, but it was unlocked. I got in and made my way to the bed. That's where she found me. I need to teach my employees a lesson. They can't know I'm alive. I call my friends. They'll be here in a few days. Can I stay at your place for a while? Emily felt sorry for John. Why do good people always meet such scum in their path? and it's usually the case that no one is there to help. John says he has friends who will come get him. But is that really the case? Emily decides to be the right person for John to help him in a difficult situation. Okay, Size, can you stay? I take it you don't want anyone to know you're here. Let's take a look at your wound. Maybe it's not so bad and I can help. It wasn't too bad before. He just skinned it too much. It's almost healed now. There was just a little bit of blood. Emily cleaned the wound, treated it, and put a bandage on it. Then ran to the neighbor's house and got some food from her. When the neighbor asked if anyone was in the house, the girl replied, "No, it's okay, there's no one there. Thank you for your concern, Aunt Evelyn." Emily made a quick lunch and fed John. The boy talked nonstop, telling Emily stories about his life. He even managed to make jokes despite the dire situation. It had been a long time since Emily had felt so at ease. She hadn't talked much to anyone while she lived in the city, just her husband and Camille. Now Emily realized that it was easy for her to talk and discuss things with complete strangers. They had only met a few hours ago. The whole week John was staying with her. They talked to each other. John was interesting and easy to be with. Alex had never talked to her so much. Usually all their communication was just going to a restaurant or a party, or just going to bed and making love. And John showed her a different side of life. Emily was very surprised. She hadn't expected to tell him about her life in the city, about her marriage, the fights and scandals with her husband about their separation. Your husband's a jerk. You'd have to be a fool to lose a girl like that. You'll find your happiness. I'm sure of it. You'll have a whole company of suitors lining up behind you, John told her. Emily felt a warm feeling in her soul, as if she was praised by her family. The thought made her uncomfortable. They had only known each other for a week. It's just not possible. She couldn't possibly feel anything for him. She didn't even know if he was telling her the truth. A week later, some friends came to pick John up. When they walked into the house, they rushed over to hug their friend. "Emily, I'd like you to meet Robert and Kevin. They're my best friends. I trust them completely. Guys, this is Emily. She saved me. I owe her my life." Emily looked at her guests with confusion. She was surprised at the warmth in John's voice as he said those words. Robert and Kevin thanked her for saving their friend. Then they got ready to leave and take John with them. Emily felt sad. She had gotten used to him over the week, and now it was going to get lonely and easy in the house. It didn't take long to pack. Kevin went to start the car. Robert held Jono by the waist and got ready to lead him to the exit. They were on their way out of the house, and then John stopped and turned around to Emily, who was standing in the middle of the hallway, and came so close to her that Emily could feel his breath. She lowered her gaze in embarrassment, and John leaned over and whispered in her ear, "I'll be back. Okay, I'll come back to you. Just wait for me." Emily looked up in surprise and looked at John. She saw a strange glint in his eyes and realized he wasn't lying. He really does want to come back, but why? Does he need something from her, or will he continue to hide at her place? Emily didn't know the answers to those questions, but she did the first thing that came to mind. She nodded. John immediately brightened, smiled, and whispered again, "I'll definitely be back. I don't know when, but I promise." John and his friends left. Emily was left alone. To her surprise, she wasn't lonely. She remembered her grandmother from her old life and thought about John most of the time. Emily was afraid to admit even to herself that she wanted him back. The guy stirred up feelings in her that she had never suspected before. She was married. But didn't she love Alex? She had never felt for him the way she felt for John now. A month passed. Emily stood in the yard and saw a car pull up to her house. Her heart sank for a moment. She thought John had arrived, but it wasn't him. The divorce papers had been delivered to her. She was now officially a free woman. There was nothing more in common between her and Alex. Only the last name remained. But Emily decided that she would get rid of it too, returning it to her maiden name. Of course, she was upset she had lost 3 whole years living in the city with her husband, and then only marrying him. Why hadn't she seen that he was a different kind of man? Why didn't Camille talk her out of it? Camille herself dreamed of marrying a city girl. Only Emily was the first to marry. And the next day, there was a knock on the door. Emily was expecting a neighbor. She had invited Aunt Evelyn to visit. When she opened the door, she was speechless. John stood in front of her. He was smiling radiantly. Behind him were several suitcases, and there was a car parked by the fence. "Hi," John said quietly. "Hi," replied Emily. They were silent for a long time. And then Emily couldn't stand it and exclaimed. John ran up to her and hugged her tightly. "I'm so glad you came," whispered the girl. "You won't mind if I stay for good?" Emily opened her eyes in surprise at all. "Well, yes, I want to stay with you. I want to live with you. I've solved all the cases. The guilty are punished. Took the liberty of shifting responsibilities to my friends. Gave them a share in the business. I'm still the owner, but I don't want to decide anything anymore. I just want to live here with you." Emily couldn't believe it. How was that possible? They had only been together for a week. Nothing had happened between them. He wants to stay with her. He barely knows her. "We hardly know each other," she muttered aloud. "But you want to get to know me, don't you?" John asked quietly. It was the moment of truth, and Emily made up her mind. "Yes, I want to get to know you." John brightened. "Then I'll stay." Emily nodded. 2 months later, they were married. They wanted to have a small celebration, but it was impossible in the village. So many people came to the wedding that Emily was shocked. People came with their own treats. Everyone wanted to have fun at Nancy's granddaughter's wedding. Emily was the happiest girl in the world. Only now did she realize that she was truly happy. John didn't overwhelm her, he complimented her. They were one. Emily did not believe that it was possible to find a man so close in spirit, but John became such a man. And she didn't have to go out of town for that at all. She knew he would never hurt her or betray her with him. She would be completely safe. After the wedding, which lasted a few days, John wanted to take Emily on a wedding trip to some fancy resort, but Emily refused. She just wanted some quiet time with her husband. In the end, he bought a trip to the mountains, where they lived alone in a cabin among the tall pines on the riverbank for 2 weeks. After arriving, they started renovating the house. And then John proposed to build another house in the yard. Emily agreed. Things moved quickly. John had enough money, and construction was going on around the clock. Emily was happy. She would not go back to the city again. There was no reason for her to go back there. Her happiness is here by her side. A year passed. Emily and John were doing well. They talked about having children. Emily really wanted to be a mother. One evening, she was waiting for her husband from town. Sitting on the small veranda of the new house, she saw a car pull up. But it wasn't John's car. It was someone else's. After a couple minutes, Emily saw a man get out of the car. He looked around and walked toward the fence. Only then did Emily realize it was her ex-husband. She continued to sit with her arms folded across her chest. Alex put his palm to his eyes and finally noticed her. He waved at her, but Emily didn't move. "Emily, it's me. I'm allowed to come in. You don't have a dog. It'll bite you." Emily didn't answer. Alex kept yelling something. Then she stood up and slowly walked to the fence. Alex smiled a slightly crooked smile. "Hello, Emily. I'm very happy to see you. How are you doing? I see that everything is fine. You don't know how happy I am, do you? I've had such a guilty conscience all this time. I've thought of you so often. I was afraid to come here. I thought you'd be very hurt. I'd done such a stupid thing. I was ashamed to come back. It was so bad without you. I really want you back. I don't want to live without you anymore, Emily." Alex was silent, looking at the girl. Emily didn't even change her face. She carefully looked at her ex-husband, noted that Alex lost a lot of weight and stuck out, as if he had been sick for a long time. He was very nervous, and it was noticeable. He tried to speak confidently, but it was not working well. Alex made another attempt to talk to her. "How, darling, you're still resentful of me. No offense. People make mistakes sometimes. The important thing is to recognize them. We all make mistakes. I'm here, I'm back, Emily." He stopped talking, and Emily loudly asked Alex, "What do you want?" Her tone was so cold that he was confused. Alex had imagined everything differently. He thought she would see him, throw herself into his arms, pay, and he would admit with some disdain that he was ready to accept her. I want to be with you, Emily. The girl was silent for a few seconds and then answered no. And then Alex realized that things were not going according to plan. He panicked. He'd better tell her the truth. Maybe she took pity on him. Emily, I really need you, don't I? I'm in a bad place. To tell you the truth, I've been in a lot of trouble. 6 months ago, I hit a man to death. I was drunk. I broke the rules and fled the scene. It was horrible. They found me. I had to sell everything to stay out of jail. I lost everything. Emily then fired me. It was just awful. Nobody talks to me. I lost all my friends. Even my best friends stopped talking to me. They said it was all my fault. Then I remembered you, remembered how much you loved me. I wanted to be with me. You have to come back to me. I'm not well alone. I'm all alone. You live well, I see. You have a nice house. I could move here. We'll be fine. Emily, you have to be with me. You just have to be with me. Emily was in shock. She wanted to laugh in his face. Dumped her, and now he's saying she should be obligated. What an asshole. What luck that he had brought her to the village then. What luck that they're divorced and have nothing in common anymore. She even got rid of her last name. This is not my house, Alex, Emily said calmly. Alex looked puzzled at the beautiful house behind Emily. Not yours, then whose? This is the house of the homeless man you left me with when you brought me here and left me here. You said he was good company for me. Well, is that right? He was right for me, and now we're living well together here. Maybe you'll stay to get acquainted? Emily replied mockingly. Alex's face changed. He slumped back, realizing that Emily had changed a lot. She was no longer the silent sheep, ready to bear his insults without complaint. Alex said nothing more and quickly returned to the car without even saying goodbye. A few minutes later, the brakes squealed and the car disappeared from sight. Emily returned to her veranda, sat down in a comfortable chair, and waited for her husband. She smiled, placing her hands on her flat stomach. There were still stripes. Today, she would tell her beloved husband that they would become parents. This miracle had finally come true.